Hey everybody, it's Amanda.
And Rick.
It is time for our evening Bible study.
Hello.
Hi. There we go. I got the notification. I'm going to share the links on all of our social media pages. We'll get started here in just a moment. So be patient with us while we get all of this together. Yesterday he didn't have any coffee when we got started. Today he's double coffeeing it.
Whew. Hope everyone's doing lovely tonight. Have coffee. I need paper. Oh, not that one. Oh boy.
There you go.
Got a blank. Let me see. This was the.
Hello.
I can sit with the wicked or you don't. Oh, these are my notes for Psalm 1. When we did Psalm 1, I thought they looked familiar.
It's been quite a while. But speaking of Psalm 1, we're going to practice that here in a moment. Practice our memory verse.
I'm
just about done with those links.
You're fine. Thank you all for sticking around. Ooh, I tell you what, I was up at 4 this morning. Some people are early risers, not me, but I have to be. And I was up. Oh, crashing though. I'm like, who was that? Falling with Style. Who was that?
Buzz Lightyear.
Was that Buzz? That was a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that really wasn't a person. I thought someone said that. I thought somebody. I guess
Tim Allen did say it.
I understand that, but I thought somebody said that like an astronaut or something. I guess he was a spaceman. I thought it was an actual quote.
So that's what you feel like you're doing physically, falling with Style.
Yeah, I'm trying.
You're crashing.
I'm trying to.
Trying to do it with some grace.
Yeah, I didn't want to brag.
Okay. Well, I've already shared all the links, and we can do Psalm 1. Let me go ahead and pull that up, so that way I can have it. We're practicing it, trying to read it or say it every night. And again, if this is your first time, like the Pledge of Allegiance, if we just say it every day and just do it for a while, you'll eventually have it up here. And I'm telling you, I think it's working. Don't you guys agree? If you're practicing it every night, don't you think you're getting it? Because this is the 4th week, and every week we emphasize one more verse. And so we should have verses 1 through 4 memorized now. And I'm telling you, it's just flowing. I think. At least I say that, and then I might start to do it and be like Rick said, crash. Anyway, you ready?
My mind might be sleepy tonight. I may mess up, but let's try it.
We'll do it.
A Psalm 1. Blessed
is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the
ungodly. You don't have to slow down a little bit. I'm just teasing. Okay, Psalm 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper.
Yeah.
Perish.
Whatever.
I messed that one up.
What? No, you're right. Whatsoever. You were right. I was wrong.
Okay. Whatsoever
he doeth shall prosper.
The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away.
Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Yeah, we're still working on that, but we got it pretty good. Not too shabby. We're getting there. By the end of the 6 weeks, we're going to have it like this. and we're just going to be on fire. Same with you. I hope you're practicing. I hope you're getting it. But anyway, that's just a little practice just to keep that Bible in our mind. You know what I mean? We got to meditate on it day and night, right? Be like the tree planted by the rivers of water. Okay, so we are continuing in 2 Samuel. We're in chapter 18. And David has been on the run from Absalom, his son. And like we said last night, the Lord has been working behind the scenes because he has his own plan. So I'm going to read the chapter. I give you a quick overview, and then I'm going to pass it along to Rick, and he's going to really discuss it. And that'll be what we're doing tonight. So anyway, this chapter does have 33 verses. Heads up, it's a little bit longer. But anyway, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
2 Samuel 18, starting verse 1, it says, "And David numbered the people that were with him and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. And David sent forth a third part of the people under the hand of Joab, and a third part under the hand of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and a third part under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said unto the people, I will surely go forth with you myself also. But the people answered, Thou shalt not go forth. For if we flee away, they will not care for us. Neither if half of us die will they care for us. But now thou art worth 10,000 of us. Therefore now it is better that thou succor us out of the city. And the king said unto them, What seemeth you best, I will do. And the king stood by the gate side, and all the people came out by hundreds and by thousands. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom. And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David. And there was there a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men, for the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. And Absalom met the servants of David. And Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak. And he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak. And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him? And why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver and a girdle. And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet would I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life, for there is no matter hid from the king, and thou thyself wouldst have set thyself against me. Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand, and thus thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. And Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing after Israel, for Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him, and all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale, for he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called unto this day Absalom's place. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, Let me now run and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies. And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead. Then said Joab to Cushai, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushai bowed himself unto Joab and ran. Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, yet again to Joab, But howsoever let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushai. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready? But howsoever, said he, let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and overran Cushai. And David sat between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes and looked. And behold, a man running alone, and the watchman cried and told the king. And the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near. And the watchman saw another man running, And the watchman called unto the porter and said, Behold, another man running alone. And the king said, He also bringeth tidings. And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man and cometh with good tidings. And Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king. And the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I knew not what it was. And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood still. And behold, Cushai came, and Cushai said, Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee. And the king said unto Cushai, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushai answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is. And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son. So we have reached the death of Absalom. He has risen up against his father and ultimately risen up against the Lord. And the end result was that he was killed. So they have this battle. That quick overview, David gathered all of his people. They were preparing for this battle. They knew it was coming. Remember, Hushai had given this advice to Absalom that they needed to gather all of the people of Israel if they were going to go against David, because David was a mighty man. And then they sent the message to David to prepare himself. So David had time to get everybody ready. So he put everybody in ordered groups, the 3 teams that they had, the one under Joab, the one under Ahimaaz, and one under Ittai the Gittite. And they all went out there, and David was even going to go with him. And the people were like, nope, you can support us elsewhere. You're worth too much. We want you to stay. We're going to go fight. And they went into battle, and it says it was just a terrible battle. 20,000 people died. And it even said particularly that most people died because of the woods, not even because of the battle, because of the danger in there. And Absalom himself was one of the people that fell victim to that, because as he was riding, he actually got caught up in a tree, so that he kind of, you've seen it probably in movies where people are riding and they get caught on a tree trunk, and he's like hanging like this, and the mule kept going. So he's literally hanging by his neck, but he's still alive. But people see him hanging there, realize it's Absalom, and they tell Joab. And Joab, of course, is like, why didn't you kill him? He's the enemy. And the guy's like, listen, we heard David say to not kill him because it's his son. And I am not, there's nothing you could pay me that would make me want to do that to the king. We care about him. Joab, of course, has no compunction there. Joab goes and kills him. He thrusts him through with a spear, and the men with him also, and they kill him. They just kill him, and they put him in a pit, and they put stones on him. And they even talk about this remembrance that Absalom had made for himself. He didn't have a son, so he put up a pillar in his lifetime for his remembrance, and it's actually still, or at that time was still there. So of course, somebody has to go tell David. So Ahimaaz was one of the 2 sons of the priest, who was supposed to be one of the guys that goes and tells the tidings to the king, things that were happening. And he particularly asked to go do it. And Joab told him, no, that's not for you. And he gave the job to Cushai. And he's like, you go tell the Lord what you've seen. And Ahimaaz, he was like, well, let me go. And he's like, why do you need to go? Cushai's already going. And he's like, well, maybe someone has Cushai. How about I go too? And he's like, fine. If he insists, go ahead and run. Well, he ends up, Ahimaaz runs ahead of Cushai. And so he gets to David, and they see that someone is running by themselves, and they're like, okay, there's tidings, and they realize who it is, and they're like, he must have some good tidings. And he's like, you've been avenged. And he's like, well, what about Absalom? And he's like, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. And then Cushai comes, and he kind of has the same thing. He's like, you've been avenged. And he's like, what about Absalom? And he basically says, I hope everybody that goes against you dies like he did. And it absolutely destroys David, as one can totally understand that, it's his son.
Mm-hmm.
And right or wrong, good or bad, he still loves his son, and he would rather anything happen rather than something happen to his son. So David is absolutely devastated and destroyed by this whole situation. However, the Lord has in fact removed Absalom as a threat to David, being in the place of the king and doing what the Lord has for him. So it's sad. It's unfortunate. Frankly, it all is rooted in David. David was the one who created all this trouble in his family, and this is one of the consequences of it. And so he's still bearing the consequences of his actions. That was way back when he was dealing with Bathsheba. But this is just one of the ways that it's come about. So it's a very sad chapter, but at the same time, it's also a reminder that you just can't rise up against the Lord and think that it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's not. He has his plan. And if you are going to try to come against him, you're going to lose every time. So anyway, Absalom. That is the story of Absalom. Which, by the way, in the Psalms, we're studying the Psalms on Monday night. We're going to just keep the story of Absalom in mind, because there are a lot of Psalms that refer to Absalom. And now it's time for Richard Beale. I think he doesn't get started until he gets his announcement.
I don't need an announcement. That's crazy. It's funny, though.
Oh, yeah. Richard Beale.
Well, it does something for me.
I know. That's why I keep doing it.
So I'm thinking of this fella hanging by his,
She said, "And the curtain rises."
Yeah. Okay, so Absalom, he's hanging. Alive and hanging.
Alive and hanging. It could be the title.
And he's been seen. People know it's him.
We already had our date, Lisa.
Oh, you're real?
Yeah.
Beale's Reels. That's why I told her she should call him Beale's Reels. You're thinking about it now. He's hanging there, a sinner. I thought to myself, I was thinking of the verse, your sin will find you out.
Oh, yeah.
You can hide and hide and hide and hide and do all kinds of mischief. But eventually, like Absalom, hanging there and vulnerable, everybody seeing him, knowing it's him, can't hide anymore. It's really a picture of us in sin, folks. The Lord is patient with us. He was patient with Absalom. But there came a day he allowed him to really fall into his own traps.
As it always happens.
And anyway, so, I don't take any joy from the man dying, especially the way he did. And I don't believe anyone, the Lord doesn't. But it is reaping and sowing, and I don't mean to say that in any kind of a harsh, mean way, but it is true, though. The way of the transgressor is hard. And it's really a shame, because here he is, the son of the king. Just think of all the privileges he had just being the son of the king. And he gave it all up, ultimately, because he wanted, I guess, to be king himself, in a sense. He wanted to be leader. And so he wanted his dad removed. But sometimes, folks, you ever get to that place where you just, it's the flesh, I know, but you want more than what the Lord has for you. We're to be content with what the Lord has for us. His gift to us, his providing provisions for us is enough. He knows what we need. And many times he gives us what we need and a little bit of what we want. He is good. He knows us very well. but sometimes that's just not enough. We try to get a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Absalom was one of the most privileged people in the whole nation, being the son of the king. You would think that would mean something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of. I'm thinking of Joseph when Joseph was second in command in Egypt, and the only one greater than him was Pharaoh. Joseph had much respect.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph had authority. Joseph was in charge, and Joseph was very blessed being second in command.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have a fella here. He's the son of David. He's not the king. But I mean, it's not to say. I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, Joseph. I mean, he came up through slavery,
Still in
so
the
being
family.
the second in command, he had gone through all kinds of trouble to get to that place. Absalom never went through that. Absalom, the only trouble Absalom had, he bought upon himself. But even then, even though he'd done this great wickedness, he'd been forgiven, brought back into the household of the king, lived 40 years in the benefits and luxuries under his father, who loved him greatly, as you can see. So certainly he did have every benefit and every reason to be thankful and grateful and rejoice in all the things that he had. But then again, again, this goes back to like father, like son. David had every good thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord had given him every single opportunity, given him the kingdom, given him wives, given him the palace. And David, of course, all of this, like I said, goes back to the whole situation with Bathsheba. David just took for granted the things that the Lord had given him, and ended up in doing things that were just completely against God's will. And it was all because he was ungrateful, because when it came time for the Lord to rebuke him, he was like, listen, I gave you all of these things. And if that wasn't enough, I would have given you more.
Mm-hmm.
He's, like you said, the Lord is willing to give and give to those he loves. And in spite of the fact that he's so giving and so gracious, a lot of times there is that ungratefulness that causes you to rise up and go against the Lord, or do your own thing, as David did. And when you do those things, you end up in trouble, and usually big trouble. I guess that's what happened with both David and Absalom.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking of so there was a lot of wickedness in the world. God judged the world, had Noah build an ark. He flooded the world. Afterwards, Noah goes forth from the ark with his sons and his sons' wives and his wife and all. It's just a little group of them.
Mm-hmm.
But God makes a statement in verse 6 of chapter 9, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed.
Mm-hmm.
And some people go to an extreme on that verse, and I've heard people use this verse to condone capital punishment and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to go that far. I don't go to that extreme as far with this verse anyhow. But I will say that the Lord is making a reaping and sowing statement,
Mm-hmm.
is what I think.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that if you live a life of violence, probably you're gonna come to the end in a life of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? In Absalom, he much like David and the whole family, lived a life of violence.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really shocking what happened to Absalom.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I do believe it's sad and tragic, especially when you see David's reaction.
Yes.
I mean, it does. You feel it,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to be all feelings and everything, but it's true. I mean, as a parent myself, David, this is not a storybook. David lived and David grieved. I mean, David's a man. He's real. And he suffered a loss of a son here. And I do grieve for David. It's a hard thing, and we'll talk more about this later, I'm sure. But Absalom was a special case.
Mm.
He was a handful, but still, like you pointed out, his son.
Mm-hmm. Well, just about the reaping and sowing. Remember, I was just saying that, he said the Lord was telling David, I gave you all of these things and I would have given you more. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 12. And if I can just read a little bit of it, he says, I gave thee thy master's house, thy master's wives, and thy bosom. I gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Right? So he says all of that. That's what David did. Verse 10, now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. So all of that is Absalom. That's literally what the Lord said was going to happen. It's exactly what happened. You have Absalom, who is the sword that wasn't going to depart out of his house, right? He was in his house, and for 40 years, remember, Absalom was in his house plotting and planning and raising up this people to go against David, right? All of this time. And then he actually became evil before his eyes. He tried to take the thing away from him, the kingdom. And then it says the idea of taking wives. Remember, Absalom went on the roof of the palace and took David's wives before everybody. That's literally what he did. Everybody could see what Absalom was doing and how he was going against David.
Mm-hmm.
All of this happened. And it's sad, and David's here mourning, and his son is dead, and all of this happened because of David. Way back when, David was the cause of all this happening. And it even says, because thou hast despised me. It wasn't because of really anything other than the fact that David did not respect the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't love the Lord. He thought this other woman was more important than him being honorable to God, who had been so good to him. And the consequence comes later. It's been, this whole situation with Tamar and Amnon, that was a little bit of time, several years after. So it's been, like 45-ish years that it's been since all of this happened. And so it took time for the reaping and sowing, but it did come exactly like God said. And it's sad to see it play out. It's sad to see David sad, mourning like this. But again, there's always consequences to your actions, and sometimes they're hard to bear. And this is just one of those things that when you see it play out, it's just hard.
Mm-hmm. I'll say something that I am. Although he's just referred to as a certain man in verse 10, I like to commend the man who would not kill David's son.
Yeah. Like he honored the Lord.
He did.
That's why he's named here.
He did. And the Lord did add him. Like I said, it's not his name, but his actions were recorded in Holy Scripture for all of eternity. Mm-hmm. And maybe we only have it say certain man because really there's application that can be made here where we should think of ourselves as a certain man or a certain woman. Because in all seriousness, we need to obey the King. Even if our peers think we're crazy, even if our peers think we're weak or soft, for listening to the King over man. It said in verse 13, otherwise I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life. For there is no matter hid from the king. And I thought of that when you read it, because I automatically thought of the Lord.
Yeah. It's a
And
good
thou
comparison.
Thyself would have set thyself against me.
It's like he would have even said, he did it.
and ultimately, we know that there's no matter that's hidden from God. God knows all. He's almighty. His eyes see right through to our hearts and our intentions. And there's nothing that we can hide. And sometimes we think we can hide our actions, but you can't hide your actions. You can't even hide your thought and your thoughts or your heart and your intentions. Now, how are you going to hide from somebody that can see right through to your heart and knows what your motive is? It's total and absolute foolishness to think you can hide from the Lord. And well, here he says there's no matter that can be hid from an earthly king, but again, that he's a certain man. I put myself in there as a certain man, and I know that nothing can be hid from God. So I better, make sure that I'm living right because God sees all and nothing can be hid from him.
This whole thing makes me kind of reflect, because we're at an interesting point in our lives. And I like to bring it back to us as individuals and how this kind of, connects practically with our own lives.
Very interesting.
But
we're learning ballroom dancing before the
no, we're not.
live events.
No,
we turn on music on YouTube and we're doing a 1 2 1 2.
No.
Huh?
No.
As soon as we master that, we're moving on to salsa.
Untrue.
Salsa.
Just don't. He's telling a joke. It's not true.
I know. I'm sorry.
Anyway,
coffee's not kicking in yet.
What I was gonna say was,
salsa.
We're at an interesting time in our life where he had this boss one time that would make up stuff and tell stories, and he thought it was hilarious. And ever since then, he does that. It drives me nuts. I'm like, no.
No.
Anyway,
I may have dreamed it.
Ella said fibber. So we're at an interesting time in our life where we're kind of at this like place where we're like in between. You know what I mean? Like we've just let the kids go.
It's called middle age. It's that in between.
Well,
I find it hurts sometimes.
The kids are gone, and then there's kind of a looking forward to the future. But we're still in this middle place where we're trying to figure stuff out, right?
They're not too far. But I can get them right now if you want them.
But we have this like hindsight, right? And it's like we're seeing how we're reaping some of the things that we've sown. And some of it, praise the Lord, is great. But sometimes you will see something in the kids, or frankly, even in our marriage, or, just a lot of decisions that we made. And maybe we made those decisions 20 years ago. But all of a sudden, we see it coming to fruition right now. And we're like, I wish I'd have done something different there. You know what I mean? But you didn't see 20 years down the road when you're doing things, when you're raising your kids and, you're letting them watch, I don't know, SpongeBob, for instance.
SpongeBob?
Yeah, which we did not allow SpongeBob in our home, just a side note, because I am not a fan. But I don't know why it came in my head. but anyway.
His legs coming out of his body always made me feel uncomfortable.
I didn't like the humor.
It was crude.
Yeah,
crude humor.
Crude humor. I wasn't a fan. Anyway.
I remember the first time I saw a picture of SpongeBob. The kids were babies, and we were in Target, and it was a picture in the kids section. And I said to you, "What is that?" I mean, it kind of takes you off guard. People have seen it for so long now that they're
immune to it.
Yeah, but when you first saw the thing, I'm like, man, I could be an artist,
Well, but it's like, for instance, I've told a story.
It's really not that unique because when we were kids, they had the Pillow People. The Pillow People is essentially SpongeBob just made crude.
For instance, I've told a story before about when the boys were little, like little boys, like toddlers and little tiny boys.
Before they had beards.
They would fight with each other. And Rick was the first one to say, I don't know about that. And I was at first like, I mean, they're boys, they're going to fight. Like, I didn't take it seriously. And so he was like, okay, if you don't think it's a big deal. Well, very quickly, it got out of hand. They're fighting. And we ended up having to put a halt on that.
No fighting games.
Yeah. Well, we had to, I mean, but it became something where if we'd have stopped it immediately, we wouldn't have had a problem with it. But because we didn't stop it immediately for years, it was something we had to be on constantly because we didn't just nip it in the bud in the first place. You know what I mean? So we have this, I feel like there's still some residual, like the boys, you know, fuss and don't have as good of a relationship as they could have. And they love each other. They get along just fine. But there's still this, you know, underlying thing, which I'm sure is, you know, people will say, well, that's all brothers. But I think they could have been different. They could have been closer if we'd have, instead of just allowing that, encouraged more friendship. You know what I mean? It's real easy to look back in hindsight and see all the mistakes and be like, man, if I had really thought about it, if I'd have really known then that 20 years down the road, it would have brought to this point. Or even like in our marriage, I actually thought. Oh,
you turn on me now?
No, but
well, we're still in this thing. We're done raising kids, but I can change now if you just give me what do you want me to do? I'll do it right now. Write
me a poem.
She's on this poem.
I've been telling him I want him to write me a poem for a while. He's not doing it. Anyway.
She watched that Cyrano.
No.
And now
worst
she's
movie ever.
Now she is on me, and roses are red are just not good enough.
But anyway, I think that we have tried over the years, like we've always tried to purpose to have dates. And we've tried to stay connected. And I think we've always considered ourselves our best friends. But at the same time, I think now that we're by ourselves, I can also see how we haven't spent as much time together as I thought we were. You know what I mean? We could have made our marriage more of a priority. You know what I mean? Just acknowledge what I'm saying here.
Oh, I'm hearing what you're saying.
I think we could have done more is what I'm saying. So when we get to this point, it's not that it's weird, but there is an adjustment.
You mean we could have done more prep work leading up to now?
Yes, because I feel like we were very child-centered. And I think that's a mistake a lot of parents make.
I think so.
You know, you have your kids and you just focus on your kids and the marriage kind of takes a back seat. And I feel like we tried to prioritize it, but not as much as we could have. Like we could have done more.
Oh, sure.
And so, like I said, now we're kind of reaping that. Now it's like we're alone and we're like trying to figure it out. And love the man. We're okay. But I'm just saying.
Talking about me now?
Yes. But I still think it would be an easier transition if we had been more focused on ourselves rather than just so focused on the kids. But I'm saying all of that to say that if you look back on your life, you probably see some things that you wish you would have done different because the impact, you don't see it right away. You see it many years down the road and you're like, man, I wish I'd have started way back there. You know, like I wish I would have started getting out of debt 15 years ago. I wish I would have started saving money. I wish I would have invested. I wish I would have done this. And when you get to the point that you start realizing that hindsight, I hope that you actually just say, you know what? I can't go back and change those things, but what I can do is start right here. Because all of the mistakes that we made in the past were usually from the place where David was making his mistake in that idea of despising the Lord or putting the Lord and his ways secondary and just focusing on our own flesh. You know what I mean? And if we stop focusing on our own flesh and make the Lord a priority and make his priorities our priority, then in 20 years from now, the things that we'll be reaping will be good things rather than reaping our flesh. Do you know what I mean? Reaping of the spirit, reaping blessing rather than reaping cursing. But we have to purpose in this moment, even though we can't see 20 years down the road, even those times when our flesh rises up and there's things that we want to say, you know what? My flesh really wants this, but Lord, please help me because I want to follow you, and just get your mind right, get your eyes straight ahead and go in a good direction. You know what I mean? Understanding that in this moment, it might be challenging, but 20 years from now, you're going to be thankful. One of the reasons why I didn't stop the boys from fighting was because it was like, oh, I just didn't want to deal with it in that moment. But in that moment, if I'd have put more effort into it, it would have saved me a lot of trouble for a long time, And so you just really have to just force yourself, Yes, they're totally learning experiences, but that's the what you learn out of it is now I need to do better. From here on out, this is a good day to start fresh. Yes, Alice says, we have this conversation weekly here. Today is the first day to change. Yes. We were talking at Sabbath service today. Well, we weren't talking. The rabbi was talking. But he said something about, it's Passover's this week. And he was saying that, at the time of Passover in the Bible is a time of new beginnings. It's supposed to be the first month of the year when Passover starts, and everything begins fresh, and it starts with salvation. And he even said, hey, this is a time where in preparation for Passover, you're supposed to be getting the lamb, and if you were actually, preparing Passover the right way. But there's also a consideration of your own self and your own sin and how you want to start fresh and begin again, renewed in the Lord. That's the idea of salvation. And he encouraged everybody. He's like, this is a good time to reflect. Maybe you need to start fresh. Maybe there's some things you're reaping that you've sown, and you can't change that now. But what you can do is from here on out, start fresh. Make some changes, make some choices. Instead of despising the Lord, love the Lord, honor the Lord, follow the Lord. And then from here on out, the things that you reap are positive.
Yeah, I don't always say stuff like this, but yeah, it's in the details. Mm-hmm. It really is. I often feel this way, like a lot of men do, and women. You work hard, you work long, and that's your responsibility, but that's your to the family.
I don't want to say provision.
No, that's not
gift.
The word. No, not gift. It's your
I don't know.
Not obligation. Your what's the word when you contribution?
Good word, Ella.
I honestly think that's the word I was searching for.
Good job, girl.
Okay, so you work hard, and that's your contribution to the family.
Yeah.
And it should not be, pushed aside or overlooked. It is important, but there's more to it than that. The details really make the whole thing work. For example, you can work a job and bring home a paycheck, but if you don't spend quality time with people, they become just strangers in your house. And then the older everyone gets, they really do become strangers. Everyone just goes their separate ways, and they don't even try to connect. And there are a lot of families that are like that. And it is sad, but it's true. That's why when you have that time, you have to make sure that you're doing more than just your standard responsibilities. You have to be going the extra mile and making sure that somehow, I can't give you a written rule. I'm not sure how. I struggle with it. But somehow you're going to have to find the time to make sure that all the details are covered. Okay? And that really goes into everything. If you work a job, your boss doesn't want you just to do the main thing. He wants you to do the details. I remember being in Bible college, and the president of the college was teaching a class to the guys. And I mean, I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of want to be hopeful, prayerful pastors, future pastors, and some of them are already pastors today. But anyway, he's standing in a room with people who could be pastors, and they're asking him questions about ministry. And the president of the college said, when you get out of the school and you go into the ministry and you're working, if you want it all to be successful, keep an eye on the details and make sure that nothing slips. And you say, well, am I supposed to do everything? Yeah. I mean, seriously, we need, I mean, I'm not saying let's get ourselves overwhelmed. It's something to pray about. It's something to lean on the Lord about. It's not a time to get more frantic.
But you can't be lazy.
And let me say this, if it makes you feel any better. Sometimes I think we add details to our life that don't need to be there.
Yes.
When I say details, I mean the right details. Write a list of everything that you need to not worry about, but do your responsibilities. And ask the Lord, is there something on this list that should be taken off? Because sometimes we multitask, but sometimes in our obsession, in our compulsion, we add things to our list, like the Pharisees added rules to their faith, and they stress us out. There are a lot of like spending quality time with the family that you're working for is a detail. That is a detail that we can nod our head and say, that's right. Okay. But there are other details that are not necessary. Little, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So like, I mean, if you were coming home, like, let's just say Rick was coming home now he wasn't, he actually got off work at like 3 when the kids were young, but let's just say he was coming home at 6 o'clock at night and bedtime for the kids is 8, he's got a 2-hour window every night to connect with them. And in that 2 hours, he needs to do everything possible to make sure he's connecting with his family because he's only got those 2 hours. You know what I mean? There might be a million other things that he wants to do, a million other pressing things, mowing the grass or, vacuuming the floor or
not mowing the grass,
anything, any little, maybe there's some things that he needs to do for work. Not in those 2 hours, because you have to have your priorities right. And you have to make sure that you don't neglect your family. Another thing that they taught you in Bible college is your family is your first ministry. Because if your family falls apart, then you have no ministry, right? So you have to have your priorities right. And I think that's what you're saying when you talk about the details, is prioritizing and make sure that you don't waste your time on things that are unimportant. Because frankly, a lot of men, I know they get tired. And I'm not saying that, they shouldn't have time alone. They shouldn't de-stress. But if you really value your family, then you got to wait till 8 o'clock and the kids are in bed before you're going to sit on the couch and watch TV and relax. And, I know that stinks because you come home from work, you're tired, you immediately want to relax. But if all you have is a 2-hour window with your kids, you've got to make the most of that. You know what I mean? And frankly, even with your wife, if you only have so much time, because we were just saying, you can't let that slide and not be a priority either. You've got to make time. You've got to evaluate what's most important to you and put those at the top of the list, and then not let the other details drop, but just make sure you have everything in the right order.
Listen, folks, if we only have a little bit to do, we possibly can get through it with just a little bit of organization. But I would say that most of us probably have a lot of things to do. When we consider the responsibilities that we have to each member of our family, our friends, we talk about ministry, we talk about work, church life. There's all kinds of things that really that can pile up. We do have a lot of things to do, a lot of hooks in the water. So And I'm not factoring God out of it. God is the one that gives us the work, and it's a good work.
Mm-hmm.
And he helps us do the work.
Mm-hmm.
He makes sure that we have time to do the work and gives us the grace and strength to do it. So I'm not factoring God out of it, but I am saying that God says that he does everything decently and in order. And if we're God's people, we need to be organized.
Mm-hmm.
I remember hearing a story of a pastor, and he had a small ministry, and he used to just try to remember everything. He'd go on visitation, meet with people, try to remember what they had talked about the time before, and then all the things that are happening at the church and the preaching. But it was a small ministry. There weren't that many people, but it began to grow. And he admitted that it took a while for it to click that it's too big for him. There was too much going on, and it was just getting there was just too much to remember. Meeting with different people, different times of the day, having things happening at the church, all the different things, appointments and all. So he said that it was a wake-up call for him when things started getting neglected. So he ended up finding someone that would be his secretary. It ended up being his daughter, but she ended up keeping everything organized for him so he wouldn't miss appointments, because that's what started happening. He started missing appointments because he was
Overwhelmed.
He was overwhelmed, piling things up. And sometimes we do that. We miss the details of life because of sometimes it's just bad organization. We're not organized, and we're in poor time management and all these kinds of things. But I wrote down that details make things solid. They really do. And the Lord is interested in the details. This is a Bible study, and God's interested in everything. There's nothing in this life, nothing in your life that is so small that God doesn't care about it. God cares about the big things, the medium things, and the small things. Every small thing is important to the Lord. I mean, you think of you were bringing up marriage. I was thinking of the way you make marriage good is the details. I mean, you can just be married. It's legal. She's yours, but that doesn't mean that it's a good marriage. You've got to focus on some details. Communication is a detail. Time together is a detail. You brought up dating, but there should be leisure times and fun times along with work and all kinds of other things. But all these things are the details that make life or make marriage fruitful. And of course, that's God honoring, but you really have to focus on all of that. She brought up that we were so kid focused for so long that I'm not going to say it's been a big challenge. I mean, we've still been together for decades, but I mean, we know each other.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. But it's odd for anyone out there that's an empty nester. It's odd when you've seen your spouse really with kids beside her or beside him for years and years and years. It was the wife and the kids, and now that the kids are gone, it's the wife, and this is weird. This is different. You know what I mean? It's different.
He said yesterday, and I think it's true. It's like having a whole new marriage.
It is, and in a certain sense. I mean, not totally,
because
but
you're so used to handling things one way in a group, and then it just becomes the two of you.
Life has changed, and it changed fast. And I kind of thought what it would be like, but I was not spot on. I mean, it's been a whole lot different. In some ways, it's gotten easier. Meal times and things like
There's
that
a lot
are
of
easier.
Positives.
I'll be honest with you, I'm a big vacuum guy and cleanup guy. I've noticed we got rid of the kids and the cat all about the same time. And I've noticed that my wife and I weren't the messy ones. The house actually stays picked up and fine most of the time. And I'm like, wow, we had some messy kids.
And that's even under Richard Beale authority.
Yeah. But again, I'll say this: details make things solid. When you're concerned about the details, things just get stronger and stronger. And I'm going to make another statement, because we were talking about David and Absalom's relationship. Now we're talking about all relationships. I think the number one relationship that you have is with the Lord, and your relationship with God is set when you trust Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. There's a relationship there, and it's never going to end. But is it going to be a close relationship, or is it going to be a distant relationship? And I hope we all would want a close relationship. Well, if it's going to be close, then you've got to be concerned. You've got to be focused on the details. There are so many details that we could pick a different one each night and just go on night after night after night after night. A prayer life, pray without ceasing, is a detail. Your Bible reading, Bible meditation, memorization. I can't say that. What we're doing in Psalm 1, memorizing it. Those are details, but that's all part of being close to the Lord. When you're memorizing His Word, it's kind of hard to think God's a million miles away, because God and His Word are parallel. They're the same. You know, you can't know the Lord outside of His Word. If you know His Word, you're going to be close to the God of the Word. You know what I mean? So all these are details. If you belong to a church, attendance and being around God's people is a detail. You get close to God's people, but when you're close to God's people, you're actually getting closer to the Lord.
Yeah, because He says they'll know your mind by the way you love each other.
So I could start naming examples more than that, but hopefully you got the idea. The main thing is still important, but the details, folks, are also important. We talk about evangelism every night, and some people like to say a phrase, keep the main thing, and talking about evangelism. And I think that's a good thing to say, because we should be going into this world of billions and billions of people who don't know the Lord, and continuing to evangelize. You know, the church is this small, but the world is like this. We got a lot of work to do. It's not something we should do just once in a while. We need to be constantly reaching out, telling people about the Lord. But if you lead somebody to the Lord, that's great. But you don't just say, glad you're going to heaven, and you jet. You jet. It means take off. Wow. There are more details that you need to be concerned with, okay? You can't just lead them and leave them. Okay, when you lead them and leave them, that's when they wander off to a cult or something. You've got to come alongside them. At least you should, especially if you know the person and you can take time with them. Get them a Bible. Go through a little Bible study. That's discipleship. See, it takes time. It's good to just lead them to the Lord. They're going to heaven. Great. You should be moving on to the next person, because we got to keep the main thing. But don't forget your details. You still have a bond with this person over here that you just led. And you got to make sure that they at least know the first steps in what to do after they're saved. Not to be more saved, but to make sure that they get in a good motion where they start to really grow. Like, do they have a Bible? Have you encouraged them to read it, to pray to the Lord who just saved them, to get into a church, to be baptized, all these kinds of things. All these are details.
That's good habits that lead to there's a saying, it's something like good habits make good something.
Tacos. I don't know.
I don't think it's tacos.
Good habits make good
something.
Hold
I don't know what it is, but they make good habits.
Fact checkers. Let's see. Good habits.
You're like old man typer.
I know. Make good decisions. Good habits make good habits. Good habits make good money. Good habits make good choices. Good habits make good pets. I don't know about that.
My mind went blank. I'll think about it later. But good habits turn into good to success.
Good habits create a positive mindset.
No. Good habits make for a good life, ultimately, is what it was saying. Because the idea is that your habits make your life. Whatever your habits are is going to turn into what your life is, the results of it. And like we said, the problem here with David was he had developed a whole life where he hadn't paid attention to any of the details. And can I just point out here, Absalom took 40 years to build up this group of people that were coming against David.
Mhm.
If David had been paying any attention, he would have noticed that his son was sitting at the gate making these promises to people. There's got to be, I know he busied himself with I know he was the king and he had actual work to do. I know he filled his life with a bunch of women that took up a lot of time that was unnecessary. He filled up, I'm sure, with a lot of pleasure rather than focusing on what was important. But the end result of that was 40 years of neglect brings about this situation where he and his kingdom are in turmoil. 20,000 people have to die, and then he has to grieve over his son Absalom. Don't let your habits get to the point that you have this kind of grief. You know what I mean? Don't, like Rick said, the details. Pay attention to how much time you're watching TV, how much time you're on your phone, how much time you spend in amusement in general, rather than focusing on the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
your family, the work that God has for you, which should be a great priority in your life. We really have to stop allowing our flesh to run our lives, because again, if you sow to the flesh, you're going to reap of the flesh corruption. We've got to sow to the Spirit and make sure that what we actually are going to reap is godliness and righteousness.
A child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame.
Yeah.
Proverbs 29, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying you need to stand over your children like a micromanager.
Maybe you do.
There are times that you'll have to do that, but I am not saying that you need to do that all the time, but you do need to be aware of what they're doing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you do need to make sure that you are helping them to stay in the right path constantly.
Mm-hmm.
David could have been more of a positive influence in Absalom's life.
But instead he was absent.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say for some, though, we all have a sinful nature. And I don't hate to do it, but I got to do it just to make sure that we all have a right view here. You can be a very faithful parent and tell the child no, tell the child yes, instruct the child, be very
a good example.
Exactly. All the things you could watch, take care of all the details, be there, quality time, everything done to the spirit of excellence. And your child can still turn out a rascal, troublemaker, all these kinds of things, because they themselves have their very own sinful nature and a free will.
Yep.
And you can be, and I'm going to say it, you can be an excellent parent and raise a rebel, because they still can disappoint and hurt your heart. But you know what? Just because that they can still do that doesn't mean that we still don't have a responsibility to do everything that we can in our power to be faithful to God by raising that child for the glory of God. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about child raising right now, but I guess it's because we have a father and son here.
Rooted in David's sin.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we back to 2 Samuel 12. All of this happened because of David. It's in the moment you see Absalom acting up and you want to blame Absalom, but it's not Absalom's fault. It's just not. The Lord predicted it way back. He said exactly how it was going to happen. This was it.
It's just really weird talking about parenting.
Why? 'Cause you don't feel like a parent anymore?
Well, I mean, it's just weird because we don't necessarily talk this way much now at the moment. So maybe one day we'll talk like grandparents, but right now we're not doing that. And it just feels weird talking about parenting. I haven't talked about parenting.
Well,
in
we
a
were
while.
talking about marriage too.
You talked about, yeah, well, marriage, I'm still there. I'm still that I'm fine with talking about that. I'm still an active
Work in progress.
contributor there. But as far as parenting goes, it's changed a little bit. You were talking about parenting there, and then I looked at you and I was like, does she have the fever? Does she have the glow?
No.
The fever.
We good. Kelly said, I always heard good habits make good bedfellows. It's easy to sleep after behaving well. That might be what I was thinking of. I knew there was a good habits.
See, the Google just lets you down sometimes. You can't trust the Google every time.
I think the takeaway here is look at what you're doing right now. It's a good time pre-Passover. Reflect, consider, and think about the things that you want to reap for the next 20 years. You can't do anything about your past. Wipe that slate clean. Start here and make choices that are going to give you positive outcomes for the next 20, 30, 40, however many years the Lord gives you. You know what I mean? You want to reap a good harvest. You do not want to reap trouble like David had here with Absalom. You do not want to have your heart broken and cry your eyes out because of the things you neglected to do now. Start fresh. It's a good time. Yes, take up your cross daily. Follow the Lord. Look to him. Ask for his help. Drop bad habits. Get good habits. And really make this just the brand new beginning that you want to just make your life really count for the Lord and reap a good harvest. That's all we got. We're over an hour.
Okay. I'll help you a second. So we're talking about details. If you start thinking about details, you may get overwhelmed. Sometimes I'm like that. Sometimes I'll start, if I just glance around the house, kind of like with one eye shut, one eye open, everything looks fine. But if I really start to look and look and look and look, suddenly I have more projects and things that need attention than I have time, and then I'll get very stressed. And I start to get the the sweaty palms and everything. So anyway, so my point is that if you start to think that you have too many details and not enough time, number one, pray about it. Because again, some of those details may be able to be delegated to other people, or maybe these are details that you yourself don't need to worry about. Maybe, you know what I mean? Sometimes we put more work on ourselves than God does. God gives us plenty to do, but we need to make sure that we're doing what he wants. Because God made us, he made the day, he made the work that he gave us. If he gave you work to do, it just makes good sense that he gave you enough time to do it. He's not going to ask you to do something that you can't do. He's not going to want you to do something that you don't have the time to do. So you have to make sure that you follow what the Lord wants. But again, when you start going, worry about those details or concern yourself with those details. Sometimes I'll do it like this. If I gotta worry, I keep saying worry, but I don't mean the word worry. I mean, if I gotta commit or handle 10 different things, and maybe these 10 different things happen, like they repeat every day. And it's like, it's just too much to do these 10 things all of a sudden. Well, I'll start doing one of them. And I'll make sure that I remember to handle that one thing. And then when I get committed to that, I'll add a second thing. So rather than seeing all of it at one time and getting overwhelmed, take little bites.
Mm-hmm.
Little bites. You know, the Lord will give you success, I'm sure, and then take another bite off of something else. And I think that'll actually maybe perhaps help somebody, because I think what we're good at is overwhelming ourselves.
Yeah.
I think most people do that. We overwhelm ourselves, and you know why? You know why I know that? Because if we didn't overwhelm ourselves, there wouldn't be so much antacids and Pepto Bismol in this world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Huh? I am constantly reaching for a bottle of Pepto because I overwhelm myself. You know, somebody asked me the other day, they said, do you drink your coffee black? They couldn't believe it. Black? You drink it black? I said, yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, well, I got to have some creamer. I said, well, I mean, I guess my creamer's Pepto, you know, because it's not unusual to see me with a cup of one in one hand and a bottle in the other of Pepto, you know. That's my coffee creamer, a little Bismol. I don't know what I'm talking about now.
Carrie said that she started a Bible study about anger because she's been dealing with her anger in a way that wasn't Christian, and that's been causing her some trouble.
That's good.
So I think that's a good solution.
I think that's wonderful.
Ella said Jorge with the eyes. Anyway. All right.
You know something, I'll be honest with you about the Pepto.
He just wants to talk now.
Well, I'm kind of starting to wake up.
Oh,
I take what?
Kelly said, Rick, you're a lucky man because Amanda does so much for your home. I had to tell you that too.
Oh, she really does. And I agree 100%.
Thank you.
What's it saying? Oh, Pepto. I get a lot of acid reflux and everything. And maybe because of the coffee.
Because of an ulcer, you think?
Maybe. And anyway, so the Pepto stuff, I'll be honest with you, I didn't grow up with that. I tell you, the first time I saw it, I thought it was the grossest stuff in the world. First time I tasted it, I thought it was the grossest stuff in the world. Do you know what? After a while, it's not so bad. You know? It's almost, I'll tell you, in all seriousness, it almost tastes sweet.
Y'all pray for me.
I know, I'm sorry.
Man stresses me out.
Well, you know, I'm borderline diabetes. So I can't have too many sweets.
He's over the border. He's a citizen of diabetes.
I'll be honest with you though, don't judge me, but there have been times that I've been craving something, knowing I can't eat anything, and I have taken a little sip of Pepto because I need some flavor. Anyway, it's a Bible study. We all have issues the Lord's working in our heart about.
Yeah, this is the time to start fresh. Good habits. Good habits. Make good bedfellows, as Kelly said.
I know. I see.
Are you ready to pray, sir?
Yeah, I know. Well, you got to make application. You got to make application. In the Bible, it talks about a little wine for the stomach. You know, for
medicinal.
I always say medicine purposes, medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I 2022 application. I a little Pepto.
Pray.
Yeah, Lord, thank you for tonight, and Lord, I pray that we'll learn much while we meditate on the relationship that Absalom had with David, his father. Lord, help us to really value the relationships in life that you give us. That they are God-given. And I pray that we will see them as gifts, and I pray that we will really treat the people in our life like as such. And I pray that we will be very concerned with the details. I pray that we would have much quality time with people and God-centered quality time, not just fun and relaxing, but I pray that folks would really have stronger Christian relationships and fellowships with people. I pray that you would bless families and churches and just all kinds of Bible studies and Christian circles and groups. And I pray that believers will truly become closer to other believers. As the days get darker and darker, Lord, we know we need it. I pray that you would bless relationships out there tonight. Fathers and sons, mothers and sons, sons and daughters, all kinds of different relationships that we have in the home can really cause a lot of drama in the home. And I know that's not your plan for the home. So I pray that you would help straighten out a lot of drama and help everyone to truly know you first, have a saving knowledge of salvation. And I pray that folks would really start to follow you. And as they follow you, they'll become closer with each other. And homes would be more like heaven on earth. Lord, we thank you for all that you do. And I do pray in Christ's name. Amen.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Come back tomorrow. We'll be continuing in 2 Samuel. And we'll see the aftermath of this whole situation. You guys have a good night. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Good night, folks.
Bye.
Night.